house with a blood-soaked past. Under a pale November moon, the quiet street of Ocean Avenue in Amityville, Long Island, looks almost idyllic. Neatly trimmed hedges frame a large Dutch colonial house with its distinctive gambrel roof and half-moon windows that resemble watchful eyes. But behind this postcard charm lies one of America's most chilling murder scenes. On the night of November 13, 1974, 23-year-old Ronald DeFeo Jr. loaded a .35 caliber rifle and walked room to room as his family slept. In less than 30 minutes, he murdered his parents and 4 younger siblings. Neighbors heard no screams. Police later found all 6 victims lying face down in their beds, each shot once. Even the family dog, barking frantically in the backyard, survived, but no one inside the house made a sound. At trial, DeFeo claimed he heard voices, urgent, malevolent whispers telling him to kill. Investigators found no sign of struggle, no trace of drugs or sedatives in the victims' systems. How had an entire family died without waking? The question still gnaws at Amityville locals nearly 50 years later. The house, a looming 3-story structure with cream-colored siding and black shutters, quickly became notorious. Realtors couldn't sell it. Neighbors reported strange lights flickering behind the windows long after the crime scene was cleared. Some nights, a pungent, sulfur-like odor wafted down the street. Others swore they heard faint crying drifting from the empty home. Despite the gruesome history, the property eventually went back on the market at a steep discount. People whispered that a darkness remained inside those walls, a presence left behind by the night of blood. Yet in December of 1975, just 13 months after the killings, a hopeful young family decided to make 112 Ocean Avenue their dream home. They had no idea the true nightmare was only beginning. The Lutz family moves. In December 1975, just 13 months after the DeFeo murders, George and Kathy Lutz thought they'd stumbled upon a dream. 5 bedrooms, a boathouse on a quiet canal, hardwood floors, and those iconic half-moon windows, all for only $80,000. They knew the house's dark past but convinced themselves a fresh coat of paint and family warmth could overwrite history. From the first day, the house pushed back. Even with the furnace roaring, certain rooms stayed icy, as if the walls themselves exhaled winter air. Kathy lit fire after fire, yet invisible pockets of cold trailed her like shadows. The family dog, Harry, barked and refused to enter the boathouse, planting himself at the edge of the yard with his hackles raised. It wasn't just the chill. Black sludge seeped from keyholes and door frames, thick and foul-smelling, impossible to scrub away. In the dead of winter, swarms of fat, buzzing flies collected on window panes and light fixtures. George swatted and sprayed, but the insects returned by nightfall as if bred by the house itself. Each evening brought heavier footsteps in the hallway, slow, deliberate, though every child was asleep. Cabinets slammed without warning. Doors locked, then swung open with a single, echoing bang. At 3:15 a.m., the exact time the DeFeo murders occurred, Kathy woke to phantom marching sounds, like a full parade tramping through the walls. George began to rouse at the same hour, drenched in sweat, gripped by a sudden rage he could not explain. Seeking comfort, the couple invited a priest to bless their new home. The moment he sprinkled holy water in the sewing room, a deep male voice, guttural and unmistakable, growled, "Get out!" A sharp pain shot through the priest's hand, raising angry red blisters. He fled and later warned the Lutzes never to sleep in that room again. Still, the family stayed. George insisted it was just stress, that logic would triumph over fear. The red-eyed pig and the shadow entity. The Lutz family's uneasy nights soon curdled into terror. It started when the children mentioned an imaginary friend named Jody, a massive pig with burning red eyes. Kathy shrugged it off until one frigid evening she glanced at an upstairs window and froze. 2 crimson orbs glared back from the yard, high above the snow. George sprinted outside, but the fresh white ground was undisturbed. No prints, no pig, nothing. The house grew more violent. Doors slammed so hard the walls quivered. A sharp sulfur stench seeped through the hallways. George once watched a heavy chair drag itself across the floor, leaving deep scratches in the wood. One night he climbed the staircase and saw a towering black silhouette at the landing. It was man-shaped but stretched impossibly tall, its edges shimmering as if heat rose from it. When George's flashlight beam hit, the light bent away, refusing to touch. The figure crawled along the ceiling, defying gravity, then dissolved into the corner. Electrical oddities followed. Lights pulsed like a heartbeat. Radios blared static exactly at 3:15 a.m., the time of the DeFeo murders. Each encounter frayed the family's nerves and stole their sleep. Kathy endured the worst. Invisible hands grazed her shoulders. Icy pressure wrapped her chest. One night George awoke to find her floating above the bed, hair drifting as though underwater. She dropped back with a gasp, trembling and soaked in sweat. Visitors felt it too. Sudden dizziness, a sense of being watched by something intelligent and hungry. Even the crucifixes on the walls slowly pivoted upside down, mocking every prayer. Whatever haunted 112 Ocean Avenue wasn't a restless ghost. It was deliberate and patient, testing its new inhabitants while tightening its grip on the house, and on them. The house turns hostile. By the third week, the Lutz family's lives unraveled. George barely slept, pacing the halls at all hours while a deep chill clung to him like a second skin. He chopped endless piles of firewood, convinced the cold came from something far older than winter. Neighbors noticed his gaunt face and hollow eyes, but George brushed them off, claiming he just felt off. The house escalated. Windows opened on their own in sub-zero weather, letting in gusts that carried whispers, low, urgent voices no one could understand. Doors locked themselves, then banged wide with explosive force. A greenish slime oozed from keyholes and across the stair banister, smelling of decay and iron. At night, the children woke screaming about a dark figure with burning eyes standing over their beds. Kathy often found their blankets twisted tight, as if invisible hands had tried to lift them away. One morning she discovered welts on her body shaped like claw marks. They stung as if freshly burned. George's temper turned violent. He snapped at the kids, then at Kathy, with an anger that felt foreign even to him. Sometimes he heard a guttural chant repeating his name, urging him toward something unspeakable. The clock still struck 3:15 a.m. with cruel precision, each night heavier than the last. Desperate, the Lutzes called the priest again. Static filled the phone line before he could speak. When they tried to leave messages, only a shrill screech answered back. It was as though the house itself was cutting the wires, severing every lifeline. Friends who visited left abruptly, pale and nauseated, swearing they'd never return. One neighbor swore she saw a shadow pacing inside the house long after the family claimed to be asleep. The Amityville home no longer merely frightened its occupants. It owned them, feeding on fear, turning every breath into an invitation for something far darker to step through. The last week of terror. By the final week of January 1976, the Lutz family was unraveling. George wandered the halls sleepless, an axe never far from reach, haunted by a deep, thrumming chant that seemed to rise from the basement like a hidden heartbeat. Kathy's dreams turned violent. Graphic visions of the DeFeo murders replayed until she woke choking on phantom gun smoke. The children refused to enter their rooms, whispering that the dark man was already there. The house no longer hid its malice. Cabinets slammed loud enough to shake the windows. Chairs scraped across the hardwood while the family watched in frozen disbelief. A foul mix of sulfur and rotting meat seeped into every room, coating the back of their throats with a metallic tang. Worse, a green, viscous slime began to ooze from ceilings and door frames, bubbling and dripping onto carpets where it left black stains that no cleaner could lift. Even in daylight, dread settled like a weight. Visitors left pale and dizzy, swearing they'd felt something stare straight through them. George grew gaunt and irritable, as if the house was draining him. Every night, precisely at 3:15 a.m., the hour of the DeFeo killings, the temperature plunged, lights flickered, and a slow, heavy thumping echoed from the walls. The Lutzes sensed a climax approaching, but they couldn't imagine how swiftly terror would strike. The flight from Amityville. The final night began with a violent crash. George jolted awake to the front door slamming open against the wall. Grabbing a bat, he dashed downstairs. Every window gaped wide to the winter wind, curtains whipping like frantic spirits. Behind him, deliberate footsteps creaked up the staircase, measured, heavy, though no one was there. Kathy's scream ripped through the house. George sprinted back to find her floating above the bed, arms stiff, hair swirling as if underwater. The children cowered in the corner as their beds shook with unnatural force. From within the walls came a deafening pounding, picture frames crashing to the floor like shrapnel. Primal instinct shouted, "Leave, now." Barefoot and half-dressed, the family bolted into the icy night, abandoning clothes, furniture, even cherished photos. They never returned to 112 Ocean Avenue. Later investigations recorded sudden cold spots, erratic equipment failures, and lingering sulfur smells, but no logical explanation emerged. Some called it a hoax. Others believed the house itself was alive. To this day, locals swear that if you linger past midnight, the windows of the Dutch colonial seem to blink, like eyes watching, waiting for another family to invite the darkness back inside.